Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. We have a very special guest with us today, Lion Goodman. Lion is a professional certified transformational coach. He is an author and he is an expert on identifying and shifting negative subconscious patterns. He is the developer of the Clear Beliefs method, which is a process for permanently clearing limiting beliefs from the core of the psyche, also resolving traumas and healing core wounds. His Clear Beliefs Institute offers an ICF-certified program. ICF stands for International Coach Federation, an accredited program for coaches, healers, and therapists with over 500 graduates in 45 countries around the world. Lion, I'm so grateful that you are taking the time to be with us today. As you know, this is a podcast about mindset, about the power of our subconscious mind. And it's absolutely a special treat to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Verit. It's great to be here. And it's wonderful to talk to someone who knows so much about the topic that I like to talk about. So thank you for inviting me.
Our pleasure. So how about we start with, how did you even get into this line of work, into this expertise?
I love telling this story because when I was a kid, I knew there was something weird, different, and wrong with me. So that's probably a familiar feeling because as far as I can tell, there's something wrong with me is one of the most widely held beliefs on the planet. Everywhere I go, people can resonate with that particular belief. And there's really good reasons for it. So I was on a quest to fix myself. Like, how can I fix this wrong part of me? And that got me interested in the mind and the brain, even in elementary school. And then in junior high school, I got interested in psychic phenomenon, and I practiced telepathy with my girlfriend and all these things. And I kept looking and searching, what is this thing? What makes me me? What makes you you? And why do those other people behave so differently than I do? And why am I more aware of myself than they are of themselves? So this was like my quest for my whole life. And in college, I met my first great teacher who had his own school in the mountains of Colorado called the Adventure Trails Survival School and Brain Laboratory. And we began studying how the brain works and then expanded it into consciousness trainings and consciousness work. So we were doing deep inner work, psychodrama, and all kinds of things. I was 19 years old. And so that began my real big exploration of everything I could get my hands on about the mind, the brain, consciousness, spirituality, human behavior, developmental psychology, philosophy, spirituality, linguistics. So I was just kind of ravenous, wanting to understand this, all based on trying to understand myself. And my teacher asked the question, and I've taken that on as my question, is what is the nature of human nature? What is the nature of human behavior? What is the nature of human motivation? So that's what drove me toward all these different practices. I took over 100 workshops and trainings. And what I noticed was that certain things, certain times, certain activities or techniques transformed me in a big way. Most of the time, what I was doing made me feel good for a while. Like, there's the workshop high. You come back from a workshop, everything's transformed, it's amazing. And then 2 weeks later, you're kind of back to your old self and nothing's changed really. So I began looking and saying, what's the through line here? Why do certain techniques work? What is it about them? And what I noticed was that every time I had a big transformation, there was also a significant belief change at the core. And so that got me interested in beliefs. So I began studying beliefs themselves. What are they? Where do they come from? How do they function? How do you change them? What makes them change? And then I tried every technique I could find about belief change. And it finally led me to developing my own technique and gathering really good techniques, and which I now teach to other people. So that's the long story in short form.
And it's a fascinating story. And I agree with you that most people, truthfully, I believe all people like you, at some point have thought, what is wrong with me? Am I good enough? That kind of trail of thought. And you're right, there is a very good reason for it. There is always a reason for it, that is often unconscious to us, and not the truth. So, would you be willing to share for those people maybe who are newer to the podcast that don't even know what we really mean by beliefs? What is a belief?
Most people, when they talk about beliefs or hear about beliefs, they think of it as a mental construct. Like, I believe in God, or I don't believe in God, or I believe in more government, or I believe in less government, or I believe I'll have another beer. That's one of my favorites. so, um, so the problem is that if you think of it as a mental construct, you think that it can be changed through mental structures or mental techniques. And there's a lot of techniques out there that are trying to change your mind. Your podcast is on mindset, right? The problem is that that's not what beliefs are. That's one aspect of beliefs. But beliefs come from our experience, and our experience is multidimensional. We see, we smell, we feel, we touch, we hear, we're having all these experiences as part of our human experience. And then we come to conclusions based on those experiences, or we jump to conclusions more often. And so that's what a belief is. It's that conclusion from the experience, but that's a multidimensional conclusion. So beliefs are multidimensional. They're not just mental. They're also emotional. They're also physical. They're also spiritual. They're also energetic. They're also financial and economic, and they're also political, and they're also social. And so in order to change a belief, you have to get it to change at the multidimensional level, not just at the conscious verbal level. And there's a lot of conscious verbal techniques out there. Well, just change your mind. Well, easier said than done. So my techniques are all based on, treating them as what they are, which is multidimensional conclusions or patterns that need to be changed at all levels of consciousness, subconscious, conscious, and superconscious, all at the same time.
Absolutely. And what are some of the beliefs that you typically hear that are not quite empowering? What are some of the common ones?
I think everybody could probably identify 2 or 3 disempowering beliefs that they have. But as we talked about before, one of the most common is there's something wrong with me. One of the principles I teach is that beliefs create our experience. So our experience creates our belief, and then our beliefs create our experience, right? So we can actually we can try on a belief and feel it. So I invite you in the audience to close your eyes for a moment and feel what it feels like to hold the belief, there's something wrong with me. And just notice what that belief does inside your body. And Baird, what are you feeling when you believe it? I know that part of you doesn't believe it, but when you try it on as if it's true, what is the feeling in your body?
I do, as you know, a lot of this work that it was almost like I was trying to find it. I couldn't find it because immediately for me, because I've done a lot of this work, so maybe not a good example. I'm sure that if I really thought about it, there are things I don't yet know that, I don't, but I perhaps another belief will land more for me. This particular one for me didn't.
Let me describe what most people feel when they feel it, because they haven't done all the work you've done, and so it's there somewhere in the subconscious mind. Most people feel heaviness. They often feel kind of a closedness in their body. Their body wants to hunch forward or head down. This is kind of a shame-based experience, and that's at the core of shame. Is there something wrong with me and I can't let anybody see it, because if they did see it, they would reject me or abandon me and I'd die. That's how it goes. That's the underpinning of that particular belief. And so often people feel it as a heaviness. So let me just try a different belief. So this is the opposite. So again, close your eyes and feel what it feels like to hold the belief, I am a sacred and worthy being. And what does that feel like?
For me, it felt almost like I was hovering. It was very light and very loving. It felt very loving.
And that's also pretty typical for when you try on that belief. That's the experience. So you get an experience out of a belief, no matter where the belief came from. So that's what a belief is.
And I love that you're bringing that into the experience, because it really is at that body, emotional level. And sometimes, to even know whether something is a belief is limiting or not limiting, you is really kind of just tuning in to how does that feel, like, just like you did, and we can often tell also, for those of us that work with clients on beliefs, we can tell by looking at the body language. So, to help the client become aware of something that they might not already be aware of what's actually happening in their experience.
Right. And in my training, I have people try on beliefs that they wouldn't otherwise have in order to feel what it feels like to have them, and so they can gain more empathy and compassion with their clients who do have those beliefs. Because you can try them on like clothing, right? We wear clothing, and a evening gown feels different than pajamas, so the subconscious knows what it is to try on clothes, and different clothes create different feelings. So in my work, we use the metaphor of beliefs as clothing so that we can actually not only feel it, but actually see it in a visual way and experience it more fully as part of the multidimensionality.
Oh, that's cool. So as I reflect back to the first exercise that you had us do, that was kind of me for the first moment. I was really just kind of trying it on and almost like trying to find it. And then of course the mind went, not true. That's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, right. And there's an appreciation. But I agree with you 100% that we need to really look inward, because this is not a conscious thing. We can't change our, beliefs just at the conscious plane. So would you be willing to share a little bit about what is it that we need to do in order to shift some of our core limiting beliefs?
The problem with core limiting beliefs is that they're so core, they're part of our personality, and they're hard to see. So it's like we're looking through them. It's like a filter that we see the world through. And that way they're invisible, or they're transparent to us. And so finding the core beliefs, you have to do kind of an excavation, or a little bit of digging at least. It's like finding gold. You have to move a lot of earth and dirt to find gold, or diamonds. And so these core beliefs are often pre-verbal, which is why most people can't recognize them, because by the time we're 2 or 3 years old, our mind has basically become a verbal machine. And although we're having experiences, everything gets translated and abstracted into words. And so a core belief is often a conclusion we came to in the first couple of years of life, even while still in the womb. As an example, a baby in the womb might be inside of a mother who's afraid. It could be because of a war or poverty or a violent husband or violent situation. And her fear hormones are going right through the placenta into the baby. And the baby's floating in these hormones and experiencing fear at the same time the mother is. Now, that kind of experience could translate into what we would later call the world's not safe, or I'm not safe. Now, that isn't verbal when you're in the womb, because we don't have words yet. We don't have words for the first couple of years of life. If life then reinforces that lack of safety, then it's going to tie into everything, and that child will then see the world through these eyes of the world's not safe, I'm not safe. And that will affect their entire life from that point forward. So in order to get to those kinds of core wounds, we have to use techniques that are nonverbal, that speak the subconscious's language, not the verbal conscious mind. And so we use techniques like getting in touch with the body, going back into past memories, getting out of the verbal conscious arena into the subconscious's own language of pattern and image and movie reels and feelings and sensations. And that's how we dive down and work with the subconscious mind directly.
Yeah, thank you. And you explained that so well. I just find it so fascinating that, we can create these beliefs, as you said, before we even have language, or even in the womb or during birth and so on. Yesterday I was working with a client. We were working on releasing some trapped emotions, and specifically on guilt. and kind of going back to the root cause, just trusting whatever kind of comes up for her, because of course we can't remember what happened in very, very, very early childhood necessarily. And she said, I'm getting an image of an elephant. Okay. And she said, and she, in her imagination, right, she said, I'm in a crib and I'm throwing the elephant. She called it Hufflepuff, I think. And she said, I'm throwing the elephant, and she couldn't consciously gather why she would feel guilty, but that connection helped her to release that, and to release a belief that was associated with that guilt. And so, again, this is not necessarily working with the conscious mind or anything that is illogical. Sometimes it completely defies logic, but yet we can feel our way into it. And when we trust the body and really our unconscious mind, then we can identify, and of course, as you said, be a choice as to whether to release those.
Right. It's in all the work I've done, it's amazing what people latch onto from very early memories. Often, children will take on the beliefs of their parents in order to help their parents. So if the parents are in pain, they'll sometimes take on the pain or the guilt or the shame in order to be good to the parent, in order to make the parent feel better. It's amazing. We used to think that babies were like blank slates and they had to be programmed, but babies are coming into the world with a complete sensory system that takes in everything and makes decisions in order to survive, because if, for example, we become like our parents, because if we become like them, they will like us and they won't flush us down the toilet or throw us out to the wolves. And so this is a primitive instinct that we'll take on. So we take on their voices, right? We take on whatever their admonitions or their guidance is or their rules are, and we put them inside our own head with our own voice, and we think it's us talking to ourselves, when in fact it's just an old pattern of beliefs that came from the parents. But we shape ourselves to become like them, because the more like them we are, the safer we are. And this is Stockholm syndrome, right? It's like a person who's captured and threatened with death will take on the beliefs of their captor in order to align with the captor. And that's a survival instinct, right? If I'm like them, if I'm aligned with them, they won't kill me. All children are suffering from Stockholm syndrome.
Wow. So how about for those listeners now that are thinking, I am nothing like my mother, I am nothing like my father. What might you say to them?
Look deeper. because one of the logical strategies for a child is to say, I'm not going to be anything like them. And so I will do the opposite. The problem is that that's just a way of resisting what's so. And so you tend to push yourself in the opposite direction, and you have characteristics that are opposite, but are equally dysfunctional. So my mother doesn't love me, I'm going to love everybody. Well, that could be as dangerous as loving nobody, right? So we need to live a balanced adult life where we have discernment and wisdom, and we can use our love wisely, rather than, like a tool that you took on at a young age and said, damn it, I'm going to do it this way. So we look for people who feel familiar. So when we're out looking for love, we've got this searchlight going, who smells good, feels good, looks good. And it's based on who feels familiar. And so a person who's been abused as a child will look for somebody who will eventually abuse them, because that's what love is to the child. Love is whatever they get. It might be abuse. It might be being dismissed or demeaned. It might be being ignored. And so we tend to look for someone who's familiar, which of course means family, right? It reminds us of what family life was, because to the child, that's what love is. It's maybe dysfunctional love, but the child can't discern that.
Yeah, and I bet a lot of the people listening are like, just being blown away by this, because they might be thinking, oh my God, that explains why I'm attracted to this kind of person, why I have this, pattern in my work life, why I'm the parent, parenting the way that I am, and so on. And so what can you say to people right now who are thinking like, I've had this belief for so long. I don't think I can change it. I'm 40, 50, 60 years old. It's too late for me. What can you say to those individuals that are doubtful, perhaps, of their ability to truly transform?
The best advice I have, and I give it all the time, is that you have patterns, you have beliefs, but you are not your patterns and you are not your beliefs. So beliefs are just tools that we use to create experiences. If you don't like your experiences, change the tools you're using to create them. And that's what I do. That's what you do. It's like we're saying, let's look at what's the cause of whatever's happening out here in the world. You don't like your work. You don't like your boss. You're not getting along with your partner. You don't have enough money. You're trying to achieve, but you're not able to achieve. Like, let's go down to the source material, because there's a source for every behavior pattern there is. And at the source, at the belief layer, that's where we find the changeability. That's where we can change beliefs, is at that causal level. And then everything else changes. Suddenly it's like, instead of looking through a green filter, you're looking through a yellow filter, sunglasses, and the world looks different. So after a session with me, and probably with you as well, the world looks different. Suddenly those barriers are gone. Suddenly that old pattern has disappeared. I had one client who was a psychotherapist, and she said, well, my life's great. Everything's going great. My family life's great. But there's this one thing, and I always feel like something bad's going to happen. And I said, well, let's work on that. So in an hour, we had cleared that belief, the originating part of that belief. And I checked with her a couple months later. I said, how are you doing? And she said, well, it's amazing. She said, after a lifetime of always having that fear that something bad was going to happen, it just is gone, and it hasn't come back. So wait a minute, it did come back about a week ago. I had the thought something bad's going to happen, and then I realized, oh, I don't believe that anymore, and it went away. Wow. So that's permanent transformation. That's what we're going for.
So how do we do this, right? Everybody at this point is thinking, oh my God, I want this. I want to be free of this, these thoughts that are just inhibiting me. What do they do?
Well, in my training, the Clear Beliefs Coach training, I offer 12 different methodologies. They're all integrated. So for the coaches that come through my training, they have a whole tool set, because one technique doesn't work for everybody. We're all unique individuals. We all have unique backgrounds and beliefs and structures inside of us. We're all human, so the nature of human nature is consistent. But your particular beliefs, how I would work with you, is different than how I would work with another executive over here, or a business owner over there, or a mother over here, because we're human, we're complex. So if I said, oh, I have this one tool and it works for everything all the time, this would be the old standard, if all you've got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I find that to be very limiting. So that's why I offer a whole suite of tools that all integrate together. And sometimes you pick up this tool because that's what this particular person needs, or this method, you try this method, it doesn't quite work, so you switch methods and that one works. So it's a little more complicated than what can I do?
Of course. And are there some of those tools that you're willing to describe, or maybe guide us through an exercise or something to just help people understand how this works?
Would you be willing to be a demo?
Yes, I would be happy to be a demo.
Okay, so before the call, we picked a topic. Do you want to describe the topic that you'd like to work on?
Yeah, thank you, Lion. So I mentioned to you that I'm in a place in my business where thankfully there is a lot of flow, and more than I myself can handle. So I've put together a team of coaches, trainers to kind of support me in serving people who come my way. And, as this is growing, there's this, it's kind of a newer little kind of simmering belief there about what will it be like when I'm doing a lot more of the managing of the team and less of the work that I love to do, which is the training, coaching, speaking. And what am I getting myself into? Yeah, it's kind of simmering there. So I've kind of put the brakes a little bit until I kind of figure things out. But once you asked a question of, is there a belief? I thought, you know what? clearly there always is. Whenever there's resistance, there is something under the surface. And so I'm eager and excited to explore that with you.
Good. And now most people, when they come to me, and I assume this is the same for you, they don't know that they have a belief, because that's, for those of us who have been steeped in it, it's like, yeah, there's always a belief down there. But people come with a particular issue. So let's imagine that you've come to me with a particular issue. You know, I'm concerned about becoming a manager and having people under me. So let's just start there, and then we'll work our way down to see what we can find in the deep bowels of your subconscious mind.
I love it.
Okay, so when you think about managing people, what comes up? Tell me about that. What's coming up about that?
Just busyness, a lot of doing. And I adore the individuals, on the team. So I enjoy being with them, but it means taking time away from my coaching, from my own learning and training, right? It's time with my family, vacations, right? And so it violates the top value of mine, or one of the top values, which is freedom. So I'm worried about losing freedom and flexibility by growing.
Okay, and if you lost freedom and flexibility, what would that look like? What would it feel like and look like?
Probably being drained. I would have to use my tools much more than I currently do. Yeah.
Okay, so just imagine feeling drained. Imagine this burden of all these people who are gnawing at you and saying, I need you to manage me, and you have to do this, and I don't know how to do this, and show me how to do this, and can you do this for me because I can't do it? And just imagine all of that happening and draining you, and tell me what that feels like.
Oh, I just wanted to run away.
And where do you notice it in your body?
I noticed it in my forehead, like here, tension.
And where's the urge to run away coming from in your body?
My shoulders.
And what's happening in your shoulders? Are they feeling pushed or pulled in some direction, or
they want to go up out of the chair and go away?
Oh, okay, good. So there's a up and out kind of feeling. Yes. And how about this? And how about the sensation in your forehead? What does that want to do?
It wants to tighten and tighten and tighten.
Okay, so just allow it to tighten. Let's focus there for a minute. Just really feel that getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And what I'd like you to do is to remember other times when you felt that way in your past. I call it spiraling back. So if you spiraled back in your past, you may remember a number of times when that felt that way. And think about a stone skipping over water. You're kind of going back in the past and following that pattern back into the earliest memory you have of feeling that way. And tell me when you got something.
Yeah, so I kind of have a picture in mind. It's not quite crystal clear.
That's okay.
But of me being in the kitchen as a young child in one of our earlier apartments that we lived in, and for some reason I must have been very young. I'm sitting on the floor and I'm kind of doing this, like, I don't know if I'm like angry or I'm kind of confused, but there's kind of that, this, physiology. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good. So just allow your body to go into that physiological stature, the mouth and the forehead and the fists. Just feel, because you were expressing yourself with your fists. Just feel that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you imagine yourself doing? Are you pounding on something, or are you?
Yeah, I'm very frustrated. That's what I feel. That's the emotion. I'm frustrated. Like people are not getting me. I'm not sure if it's people are not getting me. I'm not getting through to them. Like they're not I don't know. There's something there. Like I can't understand. They're not understanding me. Something like that.
Good. We'll just sit with that. Just allow that to be there. All experiences want to be experienced. And so just allow it to be there. Allow it to feel it fully. Feel the awfulness of it. Because you can't heal what you can't feel. So we're just allowing you to feel that feeling fully.
Yeah. It's like I can't express myself. I guess
Mhm.
it's what's coming through. Like I want them to understand me, but they're not understanding me.
Uh-huh. So it could be just when you were learning language or even before learning language.
Perhaps because I'm sitting on the floor, so I'm thinking as a,
The toddler, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So again, close your eyes if you would, and stay with that experience. And just feel the frustration of people not understanding you, and they can't understand you. You can't express yourself, and how frustrating it is. And what's your urge? Like, if you could do anything, what would you do?
My first thought was scream.
Great. Good. So imagine yourself screaming,
Mhm.
and what would you be expressing with that scream?
Like kind of that kind of like, it's
Yeah.
not even like saying a word, but it's almost like just, allowing that anger or frustration. Yeah.
Okay. And if you did translate it into words, what would it be? So you as an adult could understand that scream.
The first thought that came through is just listen to me.
Okay, good, good. And in other experiences, have you had other experiences in life where people were not listening to you?
Of course, I mean, we've all had that. I mean, my children, maybe my spouse, siblings. From a work experience, less so, but I have not directly managed people. I've
Mhm,
managed kind of projects and things, but I have not managed people.
mhm.
So not from a work perspective of people not really getting me. But of course, I mean, I'm sure I can't think of something specific right now, but I'm sure that's happened many times. Yeah.
And when your children couldn't hear you or understand you, did you feel that frustration?
Yeah. Of course, my mind is trying to kind of come to, they're a little bit older now. So I'm trying to think back to, especially when they were younger. Um, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, even something recent, having to do with one of my, my youngest daughter and technology, right? About kind of certain rules that we have, if you will, and those being broken and like typical teenagers often. And yeah, there's kind of like, why don't you get this kind of thing, right?
Okay, good. So now I want you to just feel that whole line, that entire historical line of the interactions with people when they can't understand you or they don't understand you or they won't understand you. In the case of children, they won't do what you say. You have to manage them, and you have to like it's like it's effort to get them to do what you want them to do.
Okay.
Good.
Mhm.
And is that related to this feeling of not wanting to manage people?
I mean, I can see a potential, a projection maybe that they want. I haven't had that, but maybe a part of me is anticipating that there will come a time when I will, have a certain need or something like that, or and it won't be fulfilled, and feeling frustrated. It's not something specifically I was conscious about. Like I said, thankfully that hasn't happened. But hey, you know what? If there's enough work, then and I'm, and let's say in a stressed state where there's a lot of balls to juggle, maybe it could happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like being a mother.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes along with being a mother of small children and having to manage the kids in the house and trying to work and all those things. So could we, if you were going to form this into a belief in a structured sentence, what would the belief be?
I mean, the general belief that comes to mind, right? Because, as always, for me, beliefs are kind of if then statements or if then, and that means, right? And there's always a meaning. So the if then for me is my first thought was if I'm too busy, I'm going to lose my freedom. I'm not going to have fun anymore.
Okay, that sounds very adult-like. I want to find something deeper that is more
Yeah.
like early parent-like. For example, people are frustrating, something simple like that. Can you put it into form, that kind of form?
It's almost like I don't want to deal with, it was almost like I don't want to deal with that, right? Like I don't want to deal with other
Yeah.
people's stuff or with all the, all that noise. Yeah, I don't
Okay,
want
good,
noise.
good. All right, good. So if we were going to simplify it all the way down, would it be people I don't want noisy people around me or something like that. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to put it.
This is very fascinating to me because I see it even kind of even more generalized. Like I just don't want noise. I don't want noise in my life. And also very auditory, and
Mhm.
noise. I'm very mindful of having kind of peace and quiet when I want to think. And I'm very introverted, so I like peace and quiet to have my time to go inward. So yeah, I can absolutely see a correlation there around the concept of noise, which is
Okay,
really cool. Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. So just try this belief on. Just feel what it feels like to hold the belief. People are noisy.
At first, that was some, not all. Some are
That's
actually
okay.
very relaxing, right? That kind of take me down rather than up.
But remember, when children are forming beliefs, it's all or nothing. It's black or white. And so that's why we try on beliefs that are in that form. Our adult mind knows that that's not always true, that some are great and some are wonderful, but the beliefs are usually in a simple child form.
For me, it's like a lot of people are noisy, right?
There we
Like
go. Okay,
one or
good.
two is not noisy, but when you get a lot of people together,
Great.
yes.
I think we're on it. And I would guess that however old you were as a toddler, there were lots of people talking to each other and nobody was paying attention to you. And the noise was possibly overwhelming. I'm just surmising here, but we can now see how the more people you have that are serving you, working with you, the more people are going to be coming to you, needing what you have. And so it makes sense that this through line is part of the underlying infrastructure. And we could label it as a belief. We could work it and find a sentence that describes it accurately. But it's more important to see it multidimensionally and saying, oh, yeah, there's the pattern from the earliest experience up through being a mother, up through being a business owner, and now being a manager. That's where the reference is. So
I can totally see that. Yeah, this is brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Lion, thank you. On a personal note, thank you for helping me to bring awareness to something that I was not already conscious of before this conversation, which makes perfect sense to me. So that was just really brilliantly done. And I thank you for, sharing with our listeners just the power of this work, how important it is to go to those root causes, right? To kind of create those shifts and clear those beliefs, as you said, so it can be even easier for us to make the decisions, to take the actions that will get us the results that we want, because it really doesn't need to be so hard. It can be much easier, and we can experience even more ease through our life. So thank you for the work that you do in our world. And I would love for people to hear, how can they learn more about you? How can they engage and get to experience this for themselves?
If a person wants to learn the techniques, my Clear Beliefs Coach training is a fabulous 20-week training. People come out of it both having cleared themselves of their negative and limiting beliefs and also learning how to help others clear theirs. So if you're a coach or a manager or a therapist or a healer of some kind, check out clearbeliefs.com. And that's all about my training. You can find out more about me and my coaching at liongoodman.com. And those are the two best places to get a hold of me.
Beautiful. And how do you spell Lion Goodman for those that are just listening?
Just like a lion, Lion, and just like a good man, Goodman.
Awesome. And you are a good man, and you're very generous with your time and with your expertise today. And I thank you. And we'd love to have you back, for another one of these programs in the future to share some more of this, and maybe even diving into more of the research, because I think everybody's fascinated by that as well. So once again, thank you, Lion.
You're welcome, Vera, and thank you for inviting me.